the Shellfish Association for what they do. Speaking of the Shellfish Association, Val Hall gave a presentation of her successful intern program this summer. They studied scallop reproduction. The interns all seemed very interested and connected to what they were doing. And congratulations to Val for doing that. Emily Molden and Emily Goldstein spoke about the green crab population, which appears low in Nantucket harbors. And they're continuing to study the population and reaching out to encourage an industry in harvesting them. They're also studying the habitat and if there are any benefits. I suggest all board members take a look at the fall schedule. We will be having 2 meetings per month until March. There won't be a break where there's 3 weeks between meetings. So, Marine Department report. Not seeing Sheila, we'll move forward for natural resources. Tara, do you have something for us? Wow, cool. All right. If you would, sure. You could bring it over closer and stay seated if you wish.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the Scallopers Ball is actually on the 27th of September, and tomorrow they go on sale to the public at 5 p.m. at Cape Cod Bank.
Thank
If
you.
you're interested in that. All right, news. So I got some text messages from some coworkers with a couple updates. So I'm just going to read them. Leah Cabral, our assistant town biologist in charge of the oyster restoration, she reported that all of the spat on shell was brought out to the reef for deployment, and she continues to collect data, as she has been all summer, on water quality, dissolved oxygen, light penetration, spat recruitment, and biodiversity. Her annual dive survey starts next week on the reef. There are 30 participants in the shell recycling initiative around the town, and the town was actually just awarded a state grant with the Coastal Zone Management for about $50,000 for Sacajah Pond restoration. That's going to cover final engineered plans, permitting, and that's all the information I have on that for now. Our new water quality specialist, Thais, she deployed 2 multi-parameter sondes in Pulpus Harbor and the head of the harbor that monitors water quality. She's going to analyze the data in the winter to see if the oysters are improving the water quality up in the head of the harbor. She's continued monthly testing of both harbors and 4 great ponds for the same parameters that the sondes are measuring. She's monitoring for the harmful algae bloom in all ponds and working on better public notification outreach system for when the bloom is occurring and what to do. On a side note, we haven't received any reports of the harmful algae bloom up in the head of the harbor that we usually get every August, the rust tide, so that is good news. She finalized the pond management policy document and was accepted by the Board of Selectmen for management and conservation of Nantucket's Great Ponds. And on a side note, she gained 10 pounds from all the early morning pastries she wrote. Okay, with the hatchery, so we've released, I don't have the total number, I think it's somewhere in between 120 and 150 million bay scallop larvae. This year we chose Third Bend, and we also have done releases since our last meeting in Second Bend. And so those are being monitored with our spat bags, and we will dive those before the end of October to see what actually recruited and how they're doing. In First Bend, we came upon a large set of nubs. We did a release in First Bend last August 28th of last year. And so what we're doing right now is we're surveying most of the bend. It's really thick and dense there. There's about 30 to 50 bay scallops per square meter, which is a lot. So what we're trying to figure out now is what the range of distribution is from starting in the thickest area and moving out. And so we've got about 2 or 3 more days of diving before we have an assessment of, that whole area in First Bend. So I probably will be coming back to you at the next meeting with an update on that, and then possibly open it up for discussion to see what makes the most sense for managing that area, because the nubs right now are mostly, like, I would say 45 to 50 millimeter, and they only have another month of growing probably. So I don't know if they're going to make the 63 and a half nub rule. And so if that's the case, it's going to be a tricky situation, I think, for enforcement and also for that area. So we should talk about that at the next meeting. The other reason why we're surveying it, obviously, is because we did a release there, but also we saved some of the ones that we released, and those are involved in the UMass isotope study. So we're trying to determine what percentage of hatchery raised scallops end up in the harbor. And that's kind of tricky, but what we do have is we have the original ones that we released. We have samples of those that have been processed, so we're collecting the nubs too, and we're going to see if they're linked to the ones that we released. And then on September 10th, we have it's called Give Back Tuesday at Cisco Brewery from 4 to 7. They're sponsoring our department, and they're going to donate a proceeds of their sales from that evening to our department. So we'll be there with all of our educational materials, talking about shellfish and the upcoming fishery season and all the shellfish regulations and all that good kind of stuff. So I think that's all I have for now. If you guys have any questions. Oh, I left one thing out. The Great Harbor Yacht Club did end up sponsoring our grant for eelgrass, and so those surveys are going to begin in a couple weeks. We have some folks from off island that are coming in to do those dive surveys for us. And so we'll have a comprehensive look of what the shellfish populations are for Nantucket Harbor that will help us make our decisions for what we need to do next year.
What can you tell us about the Great Harbor Yacht Club's great cause that we haven't read in print, whether it's in N Magazine or the Inky Mirror?
They started a foundation. As far as I can tell, it's a nonprofit arm of the Great Harbor Yacht Club, and so they have a scientist on board that is reviewing projects that get put their way for funding. And so far, everything that we've put in front of them has been very well received. We had a fairly large event for them a few weeks back where we opened up the hatchery one evening for them for 2 hours to walk through during a dinner they had on Brant Point. And so we really got a lot of people going through the hatchery and aware of what we're doing. And so that was really, really good for us. And then our grant was funded, so we were happy about that. I'm not really sure, if they're going to have like a scheduled bid for proposals that come out for everyone, or how they're going to proceed with awarding money that they might have.
Well, it sounds ambitious and very positive, and I hope they can, come up with some problem solving.
Mr. Chairman, I talked to Roger Vandenberg, who's on their board, who had done a bunch of work with us before with the money that was given to the, for lack of a better way to say it, for the lawsuit for the building of the club. Anyway, I left him a message, and I asked him if he'd be willing to come and explain maybe a little better to us what they're trying to do, and if we can be involved and if we can help in any way. But I haven't gotten back from him. He travels pretty extensively, but anyway, I did reach out to him and left him a message. So, and I know he's part of that foundation.
Correct.
Or that
Yep.
group.
Board members, questions, comments for Tara?
Excuse me, is that pond management report, is it online?
The
The one that the selectmen adopted?
I don't know if it's online yet. I will check.
All right,
I'll check
thanks.
for you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? For Tara? Tom,
Thanks.
Dave?
Great
Ginger?
job.
No?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. If you want to get home to your family, you're more than welcome to. I did have one question in old business I'll jump up to just because it's on our agenda. Our concerns about the vineyard wind mitigation and, what they've done so far in granting money to a type of fish board in Rhode Island where money can be doled out to fishermen who are negatively affected. I don't know if they're going to approach Nantucket with something like that. And as you know, there's two sides to this. And, we all, I'm sure, agree with renewable energy, but at what cost to the environment? And my simple concerns are, I would ask you, and you don't have to answer right now, but what would like a marine biologist's opinion be of all these pylons being driven into the ocean floor and these solid structures being out there where whales go by, and also these solid structures being a hindrance to fishermen during, especially during inclement weather. So, if you're willing, I know it's a hot topic, and I'm not asking you to go one way or the other, but maybe have some facts. Has there been any studies from from Europe that can be researched as far as negative effects on fish movement?
I'm happy to look into it and get back to you at the next meeting.
And if you don't have it for the next meeting, that's okay too. But just kind of getting a bug in your ear, I guess, because I'd like to rely on your opinion also. So, thank you, Tara. Public comment. Hazardous materials collection and containment. I have nothing new except for an October meeting that will cover hazardous materials specifically. I believe it's October 17th, but don't quote me on that. Sorry, I don't have dates in front of me tonight, but there is a whole list of meetings that the DPW is holding here in this room. I believe they're once a month on different aspects of our solid waste stream. September's meeting is on how the composter works, I believe, and separating of materials. But as far as hazardous waste, I have no new updates from Rob McNeil and nothing from the building department at this point.
Mr. Chairman, it is the 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're held from 6 to 8
Right.
here in this room? Okay. Any other comments on that subject from the board?
Do we know anything further about the stuff that was left out on the moors that killed the dog?
No, I haven't heard.
Okay.
Mr. Brace is still working on the grid for goals and objectives, so we have nothing new with that tonight. Any comments from the board on that subject? No. Any comments from the board on the vineyard wind mitigation? We'll move forward to new business. A couple of fishermen approached me the past couple of weeks. One was about the Jackson Point parking being needing some upgrades. I guess it's a muddy parking lot. There's a dinghy dock at Jackson's Point that's been up in the salt marsh for quite some time. These are, of course, questions for Sheila, so unless any board members have any comments on that. We all know Sheila's quite busy, especially during certain times of the year. I'd just like to check up once a year on her, how she's feeling, if she's feeling overwhelmed. A lot of departments, there are new departments being created. There are departments that are getting additions to their staff. And it's simply a question I like to ask Sheila at least once a year. Because I don't believe she's had any staff added for quite some time. And if she feels the need to have added staff, I would love for her to come forward to us for support. Another fisherman brought a concern to me that he was going around the boat basin and was yelled at by a deckhand on one of the big yachts for getting too close to their anchor chain. And I don't know about the rest of you. You're welcome to give your 2 cents, but it is, how far out does the boat basin's water go, and then where is Nantucket's water there, and how much of Nantucket's water is the boat basin collecting rent for to have all these yachts stern to at the end of Strait Wharf? It wasn't too long ago when they tied alongside and only about 3 of those yachts could fit out there, and now I counted 12 a couple weeks ago. And they certainly are beautiful and they attract a lot of attention, but the water also looks murky under their blue lights, but there's certainly a lot of activity there also. I noticed a lot of scup, saw small striped bass. And so they seem to be surviving okay amongst the murkiness there. But hopefully things, clear out and flush out and freshen up after all the hard summer use down there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
About the chain,
Yes.
they have they have a lot of chain out,
Yes.
but the chain's laying on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So, the chances of somebody, unless they're 6 or 8 feet off the bow of the boat, they're not going to be bothered by the chain.
Mm-hmm.
But
I was out there a lot this weekend on my boat, and maybe the guy was a little too close, but you don't have to, you've got a lot of room to go by without having any risk of hitting the chains.
Yeah.
The chains are coming, you can see the angle of the
Yeah.
chain, the chains are coming down.
the boats are being held there by the weight of the chain. They're not being held there by the anchor. The anchor's out in the deep water, and they run the chain back, and I don't know. We've never had an issue of anybody being bothered by the chain itself, other than the fact that they get snarled amongst themselves because one lays his over the top of the other, and when this guy wants to leave, that's when the diver comes in and floats the chain so they can pull the anchor up. So it's actually been a lucrative business for a couple of people around here to do that. But anyway, I don't see where the chains would be an issue.
How about the space itself?
The what?
The space itself that they're using.
Well, one could argue that they're as far as the space is concerned, I don't think that their permit has any limitations as far as space towards the water side. One could argue that the anchor itself is probably in the pretty damn close to the anchorage. space is an interesting issue as far as how much room they're taking up. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, to me, it's kind of like, I compare it to somebody planting their hedge on the property line to a sidewalk or a street, and that hedge grows out 2, 3, 4 feet into the layout of town property.
Right.
And in that aspect, I'm getting a little tired of seeing it, and I feel these people ought to be taxed and for using town property for their personal benefit of privacy. And the same goes with the boat basin. Every time I bring up the boat basin, Sheila is quick to mention how they play by the rules and they're good stewards, and I appreciate that. But are they using town space? Are they benefiting from it? It certainly appears so. What do they give back?
Right.
What do they contribute to like Great Harbor Yacht Club coming out and creating an outfit that's going to do some studying and possibly make a difference? Is the boat basin, doing the same? If you want to use the space, maybe give back, and I feel we need to encourage that somehow.
Oh, that's a good point. They're rated as one of the top marinas on the East Coast year after year, and one could argue that, I think the only, and I may be wrong, but the only public benefit that I know that they do is that they do provide space for the sailing teams from the high school and community sailing in the spring before the programs get cranked up, when sailing is a big issue up at the high school. But other than that, I don't know that they're doing anything. And by the same token, I don't know that Nantucket Yacht Club is doing anything. So it's a good point. I think that, we have to coexist and use of the waterways, but I don't see those guys being as active as Great Harbor Yacht Club has been.
Well, there's an impact, and
Sure.
I think everybody who impacts should somehow try to mitigate that.
Sure.
And so it's just throwing this out there. Like I say, it was mentioned to me by a local fisherman, seasoned old salt, Lionel Starr. And so I thought it was a legitimate concern.
Well, the other
for
thing,
sure.
too, is it doesn't help that Scout, which is like 230 feet, was right there on the end. I mean,
Right.
that's, one of the biggest beasts that we have come in here. One of the blessings of Nantucket Channel is because most of these big boats are limited by their draft, so
Yeah.
they have to anchor out. But, a couple of them, like Scout, has been able to sneak in here, but we've always been, that's why we don't have cruise ships. It's one of the reasons we don't have cruise ships. Because the draft in the channel, so, but it didn't help when there's a 230-foot beast sitting right there on the end.
Any other board members on this subject?
I would, and I will certainly do this, but I would recommend to all the board members, when you're at meetings or dinners or cocktail parties or meeting with friends or having a barbecue in your backyard, and there's other folks there to champion your idea. I think it's a good idea. I think everybody should give back on this island. And, maybe they've never been approached. I don't know. I know I've never approached them. I know that they do certain things that help the community, but I think it.
Well, where's
Where's
they
the
do
Scallopers
offer-
Ball this year? Is it the Yacht Club, Nantucket Yacht Club?
Yes.
Okay, so there's something. I mean, but it's little things like that, and I don't mean to not belittle, but to minimize that. But it's little things like that they do that is good for the community. But that's a one night thing. And I'm not saying that they have to do everything the Great Harbor Yacht Club's doing. The Great Harbor Yacht Club, we all know, has been trying really hard because, they came in here kicking and screaming. But the point is that I think, you know, when we're talking to our friends, we need to talk about this a little bit. You know, everybody, myself included, need to give back.
Well, and in our part, we're kind of going into this blind, and you know, there may be some things we don't know about.
And I'll talk to Tom. I'll talk to McEachran and
I mean, I know they offer safe harbor to the Coast Guard, to the Marine Department, when there's you know,
They do.
high winds, and I imagine if Natural Resources has boats in the water, they'd allow you to tie up inside the marina during storm events, which is extremely generous, and but it would be good to know how they do contribute, so that we, you know, I certainly don't want to point any fingers.
No.
Just want to know. And I mean, it's a big eye opener when you see 12 yachts stern to out there, and you're used to seeing something different for so long. It's a large expansion to what used to be there. So it's a greater use.
They've been med mooring for probably, I don't know, I forget how old I am, but 25 years, probably 25 years now. But the amount of, it would be interesting to find out if the amount of revenue,
Right, I was gonna say, because
Is-
they do by dock foot.
if it's by how wide the stern is,
Right.
that's one thing. But if it's how long the thing is, and you're charging them $6 a foot, they're,
Totally different story.
they made a few dollars by Medmore. Yeah, good. Right. So I think it's something to look into, and you know, and Christina's, you know, Christina's done a great job there, and but yeah, we'll just look into it.
Public questions, comments, anything in new business or old business? Tara, I'd like to back up a little bit. You mentioned the nubs and the large amount of them in First Bend. First of all, I imagine that there's some good seagrass or eelgrass beds in First Bend. And I was speaking with Bruce Cowan today, and he's aware of the nubs, and also mentioned that you know, they could be an issue this season. So at least there's already some awareness out there. He's been pretty much strictly a Nantucket Harbor fisherman, and so certainly, you know, with the few amount of, how many licenses have been pulled this year?
I believe it's like 100.
Wow.
Yeah, not many.
Yeah.
How many recreational licenses, you know?
I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
Well, actually, 100 commercial licenses compared to what, maybe 12 boats out there last year. I mean, who knows how many people are going to actively fish, but we all know that, you know, people just keep it in their wallet and don't actively go out, especially with the trades the way they are. But certainly interesting, and you know, I think we probably all knew it was coming. The nubs come in cycles, and hopefully there's some reasoning that takes place if it is an issue.
Did you ask for things for the next meeting?
No,
Did we
but
get there yet?
is there something?
Well, somebody was asking me the other day, they said they wondered about the goatscaping because apparently the sheep that have been used to try and eat some of the invasive species also produce a lot of nitrogen-rich fertilizer, but according to the person who talked to me, goats are even more intensive. So I don't know if we want to, I haven't done any research, so I don't know how many, you know, how much per goat, if it's enough to have an impact, or
Goat manure is more intensive with
more-
nitrogen.
apparently so. So, what'd you say?
I'm saying, who would have thought that?
Yeah.
And I would have thought it would have been, I mean, we used to have 30 goats. We used to have
Right.
a pretty big manure pile. When I think about it.
So, you know, do we want to ask the goats not be in the, you know, whether they have an effect on the watershed, or, I mean, I think these are things we might like to know. Another thing that has been mentioned to me is the fertilizing of things like window boxes in town, and that all, you know, the green juice that runs down into the storm drains and so forth.
All right.
There are some of those, as we all know, on those side streets where the window box isn't 4 feet from the paved surface.
In some cases, it's over the water, and there's window
Oh,
boxes.
I hadn't even thought of that.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh,
Wow, a direct hit.
yeah.
Tara, are you familiar with any enforcement in the fertilizer? You know, has any enforcement been applied to anybody that you know of? I know it's more Jeff's office, but
Yeah, I haven't really heard of anything this summer. I think there's a bit of rearranging that's going to be going on between our department and the health department. So I think we're still trying to figure out, you know, where that role is going to lie. But I'm pretty separate from.
Yeah. You know, in my opinion, it's such a difficult thing to regulate. We can write all the regulations we want, but how many inspectors do we need to have boots on the ground to be able to keep an eye on that? It seems like such a difficult thing to be able to enforce. I mean, I notice guys, the first thing they're doing when they get out of the truck is put this backpack sprayer on, and they're spraying around the driveways, they're spraying around the bluestone walkways, and I'm like thinking, what are they spraying?
Roundup.
Is this a Roundup application at every mowing to keep the weeds down? You know, and you see these class action suit ads about the Roundup causing cancer now, and we just keep on spraying it more and more. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. I wish there was something more that we could do about it. As you know, I guess local municipalities cannot ban pesticides or fertilizers at this point. Mr. Santa Maria has mentioned that some laws may be changing in the near future that may give us some more regulatory. Tom, you know something on that?
Well, I just want to make a comment to respond to Ginger's comment. There's also, though, an activity, getting people aware of this that would help. I think there are a lot of people who don't even realize that if they fertilize their window boxes and things like that, that it's actually going to end up in the water. I mean, because they're thinking of fertilizer, the lawns and the gardeners, and so there might be a way to do some kind of something that would bring some awareness to the issue, because there are some people who are sensitive and would stop using these products if they knew that they were going to damage the harbor.
Well, you know, to that point, with all the literature, and maybe it's in there, but with all the literature that I've read about the fertilizer stuff that they hand out, the public education stuff, I've never heard flower boxes mentioned. So to your point, that's great. That's something that needs to be added. And the Roundup thing, I mean, my landscaper in North Carolina, first thing he does is spray Roundup, you know, right around the house. That's the first thing he does when he gets out of the truck. And, but the Roundup thing, you know, we always talk about the fertilizer and the pesticides, but I don't think we've ever talked that Roundup's been in that discussion.
Well, there was a question at town meeting, was it last year? They were thinking about trying to ban glyphosate herbicides on Nantucket if they could.
Oh, I see.
And it was tabled because of the very issues of local control that you brought up. And there is some feeling even in the conservation community that some of those actually have a place in invasive species control. So there again, if if goats would eat Phragmites, maybe,
Yeah,
you know, so then which one are we choosing,
Yeah,
you know?
darn right.
So,
Yeah.
but these are things that it would be nice to have information on.
Oh, most definitely. We had many years ago, we had a permit to use herbicides on Phragmites. It was a one-shot deal, and we had to, swear that we would never ask to do it again, but we ended up doing it, and it worked. But again, it's something that we've kind of, maybe we've missed that, along with the flower boxes. I think that's important.
Well, with any luck, I'll have a little more information for the next meeting.
I wish there was something simple as far as public outreach and education goes. It seems so simple, but it's almost like, all the landscapers are in a routine, and they conduct this routine when they show up, and I don't think the clients are even aware of what's getting applied. And so do you reach out to the client to ask their landscaper not to use certain projects, or do we reach out to the landscapers and say, hey, enough is enough. What are you doing here? I've been wanting to put a sign in front of my house all summer long. No Roundup, no fertilizer, no problems. This is crabgrass month. Get used to it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with the crabgrass in my yard,
to-
and I don't
to
know
your
why
que-
these lawns have to turn
To your
blue
point,
now.
to your point, or your question, I think you have to target the homeowner. The landscaper's in business to make money, and he's in his routine because he's got 10 more houses to do today. And I think you have to target the homeowner.
I agree. The landscaper's philosophy is do what the guy wants. So we have to go to the
The
guy.
guy has to tell him.
But actually, the landscapers are saying, this is what I have to offer. And a lot of the homeowners are like, I want what they have. Look at how bright and beautiful that is. Somebody just today was telling me about the different colored hydrangeas we're seeing today. We're seeing purples, pinks, reds, blue. And I guess it requires a certain type of fertilizer and other chemicals with it to get these different colored hydrangeas. I thought they were simply just being...
No, it does
Red.
have to do with, there may be some genetic component, but it does have to do with what they're fed. It's some kind of magnesium thing, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah,
Same combination, yeah.
yeah.
I see.
Hey, they're certainly beautiful.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
It's nice to go out and pick a bouquet of them at about 10 at night, but
Well, that's better than what Johnny McLaughlin would say.
what's that?
Get them out of the cemetery. Yeah.
I pick Woodbury Lane, so. But,
Now everybody in Nantucket knows.
yeah, that's fine, that's fine. Anyhow, there's plenty there to go around. I don't think they noticed the two missing, so, any
I would notice.
recap our items for next meeting?
I'll ask Mr. Vandenberg to come and tell us what Great Harbor Yacht Club's up to. And I'll talk to Peter McEachran at the Nantucket Yacht Club and Christina, just to say, hey, could you let us know what you are doing? And, could you think about maybe doing a little bit more for helping the public?
Christina
Christina Martin at the boat basin.
okay. Is that, the previous dockmaster's daughter? Is she still in charge there at the
Who?
boat basin? Is that the previous dockmaster's daughter?
No, she's there, but she's in charge of operations, and Christina's kind of the manager. It was when George retired, the two of them
That's
took
George.
over kind of a
Christy
co-manager thing.
Bassett, yes.
Christy Bassett, right.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.